Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see everybody here. Hope everybody is enjoying having just a two-day conference. First day we've had the two-day conference in the fall, if it's even fall time yet, and really are liking the way it's turning out. Hope it's working out well for you too. Now, I heard a story earlier when Jim Craig was up here talking about when he was playing hockey and there was a game he was kind of concerned about, and he thought maybe I could break my own leg and get out of it. Now, I'm going to be honest. I thought about that for a second. There's a powerlifting competition going on upstairs, and there were some heavy weights in there. I thought, you know what? If I went and deadlifted way over my max, blew out my back, I wouldn't have to give this presentation because we're going to have to talk about some big things today. But I don't think any of us in this room got into the positions we're in because we want to do easy things. We're here because we want to do hard things, because we need to have hard discussions about tricky policy topics, about things that are important for our communities. And we're going to have some of that discussion today. So stick with me here for the next 20 minutes while we preview some of the things that are coming up in the legislative session. And I know none of the topics are going to shock you. While we ask you a few questions, because what would a legislative preview be like without Slido? And then talk about a few things going on the ballot this fall. So to start off today, later this afternoon, we're going to have our caucus discussions. A few things. If you have on your table couple of documents. One, this is the standalone one-pager. There's a checklist here. Working with the legislature and sometimes not working directly with the legislature on some of these just came. There's been a lot of things, again, that we've negotiated over the years, a lot of things, particularly in the land use space, that you're required to do. I'm sorry. There's a lot of them. There's a lot to do on there. So one of the things we want to do is provide this checklist to make sure a couple things. One, that you're aware of the changes, the big things that need to be changed in cities that you may need to update. But then two, we're going to have discussions in caucuses later today about some of the lessons you've learned as you've gone through these. So if someone hasn't quite updated things yet, if someone's still going through the process of updating ordinances, we want to have discussions about things that you've learned that you can share with your colleagues in other cities and towns that could help them. So that's number one there. The other one is Utah's housing approach. So that's the kind of fold-out flyer you've got there. What this does is lays out multiple things. We won't have time to go through all of it right now. But one, board of director principles that have been guiding us for the last couple of years as we engage in the land use and housing discussions. The other thing there, if you open it up there on the, right-hand side, if I turn it that way, left hand if I'm looking at it, but it gives you some examples about how to tell your story to legislator. So what is the housing story in your city? What is the infrastructure story in your city? So encourage you to take a look at those. We're going to discuss those a little bit more in caucus meeting today. So again, review the checklist, talk about some of the practical changes, and then we're going to have a continued discussion about the Slido questions that we're going to ask you now. But before we turn over the screen, I just need to do a quick update where the caucuses are. So you see those. Rapid Growth Caucus is an update. We had split up the last couple of times into two different rooms. We missed you all so much, we're going to bring everybody back into one big room. So if the Rapid Growth Caucus, whichever one you've been going to before, go to 155D. If you go to 155E, you will have a very lonely, but perhaps quiet caucus, if that's what you're looking for. So with that, let's look at Slido. We have a few questions that we do want to ask as we get ready for that caucus later. And also, as you know, so much of the feedback you gives us informs how we engage at the Capitol and the data that we use. So you've got the Slido up there. Join there. You can either scan that QR code or just go to slido.com and put in the number 2414348. I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to get unlocked. So the first question that we're going to ask you is about the subdivisions ordinance. A couple years ago, there was the law that passed that has everybody updating their ordinances around subdivisions. Want to know how that's going? So you can see that there. Has your city updated your subdivision ordinance to an administrative process as per SB 174 in the 2023 general session? So yes, you've done it. No, but you're working on it. We haven't started yet. And what changes? If you aren't aware of the changes, please find us after and we can make sure that you're aware of that. But again, part of the caucus discussion on that checklist. There is still funding available if you need help with the subdivision ordinance changes. One of the things that we were able to negotiate was funding that year to help with that. If you are still in need of assistance, please let us know and we can help try to make those connections on that one. So I'm going to give about 5 more seconds on this one. All right, let's jump to our next question. So with this one, don't answer for a second. Let me explain it. There's more to it than is just on the page. One of the discussions that comes up year over year at the legislature is basically a statewide overlay. Statewide overlay that could increase zoning or increase density in zoning across the state. No questions asked, doesn't matter where it is. That's one of the battles that we're fighting all the time, is having a statewide overlay, just automatic upzoning everywhere. One of the things that we're interested in is getting more affordable housing in the state. As was brought up, this is a question all over the country, and one of the things, or one of the principles, I should say, that is driving our discussion. So the idea here would be to have an overlay in some part of your city that gives additional incentives, so bonuses, setback reductions, etc., to builders in exchange for guaranteed affordable owner-occupied housing. So the question is just generally conceptually, would your city be interested in this? Would you be willing to adopt some kind of overlay? Again, we're not saying citywide. We're saying you can look at what makes sense in your city and where. And then you give some kind of incentive, density bonuses, whatever that could be, for guaranteed owner-occupied housing. So yes, my city already has one. There are a few cities that do this. Moab has put something in place for workforce housing, looking at those that work in the community. There's some bonuses for that kind of thing. Yes, details matter. My city is supportive of the concept. You're welcome, attorneys. Yes, there are a lot of details that would have to be hashed out. That's a great answer. Generally, conceptually, we can talk about this. Unsure, always a great fallback if you don't know, or no, my city is not supportive of the concept. This is just something we're interested in getting more, and we're going to talk about it more later today. If you're not sure about this, if this isn't something you're interested in, if you want to talk about more of the concept, again, in caucuses this afternoon, bring those questions and discussion points. We want to hear more about that. And going to give 7 more seconds on this one. Yes, I am just arbitrarily picking how long we're going on these. And that's 7. Let's go to the next one. Which of the following housing types, if any, does your city currently allow? Do you currently allow small lots, single-family detached, that are 6 units to the acre or more? Do you currently allow townhomes, single-family attached, duplexes, triplexes, or other missing housing? None of the above are currently allowed. One of the things that we hear from the legislature all the time and from builders is that we're not allowing anything but single-family home on large lots. So what we're looking for is information that helps us look at what that narrative looks like. We know there's a lot of cities that are doing many of these things. This will help us to figure that out. And if anyone is tired of talking about housing, yes, we all are, but this is the issue, and this is what we need to keep talking about. So I apologize that we have to keep talking about it, but I'm not going to apologize that we're going to keep delving into it, because it's the big issue we need to. All right, and then our next question, final question. Does your city require housing units larger than 1,000 square feet to be built, either through base zoning or development agreements? One of the things that we've heard recently is that cities aren't allowing small homes on small lots or small homes at all. So again, this is something we're trying to get our hands around. This is just an interesting data point for us to figure out. And this is something we can discuss later. If you say, no, we don't allow anything like this, let's discuss what that could look like as well. Now, I want to be really clear. We're not saying that any of these are things that necessarily should or should not happen. But as we're working through the narrative and working through the discussions on Capitol Hill, this helps us collect data and understand what is happening in your cities. So again, we're not pushing for anything to happen here. We're collecting data, trying to understand what's going on. So going to leave this one for about 5 more seconds. And if I seem like I am in a rush, I am in fact in a rush, because we have a lot to talk about. I'm going to be very open there. All right, I think done with that question, we can move back to a few other topics that have come up. Now, in my previous life, 3 years ago before I joined the league, I was the director of elections in the state of Utah. One of the things that the elections office oversees are statewide initiatives, referenda, things that go on the ballot. So in 2017, 6 different groups filed to run statewide initiatives. We had Medicaid expansion, we had redistricting, we had medical marijuana, we had Count My Vote was going for direct primaries, if anybody remembers that. Keep My Voice, which was the opposite of Count My Vote, was looking to turn things back to just caucus. And then there was Our Schools Now. If we can go to the, oh, I've got the clicker. I'm like, why isn't it moving? Because I'm not moving them. All right, so this is the Lieutenant Governor's office back when I worked there. Just for fun, this was all the statewide initiatives all into one big pile. If I was thinking back then, we would have had someone stand next to them for scale. But if you see those cubicles there, those are a little over 6 feet tall. That gives you an idea of how tall we had stacked those. The county clerks verify all the signatures. There's roughly 1 million signatures between all of those boxes there. And so we're going to talk a little bit about initiatives and referenda, which is something from, again, my past life. So I want to clarify this one first. An initiative is a new law initiated by members of the public. So if someone says we want to pass a new law, whether in the state or the city, they initiate that. That is an initiative. A referendum is when a law passed by a legislative body is referred to the voters. A lot of times we lump them all and call them referendum or referenda for the plural, but initiative, the public initiates it. Referendum is something that a legislative body passes and is then referred to the voters. There's our 101 on that one. So that year, like I said, a lot of them passed. 3 of them ultimately went on the ballot as initiatives. 1 of them went on the ballot as a non-binding opinion question. There's a really quick story I'm going to tell you on this one just because it's fun. It was right after Memorial Day that the Lieutenant Governor had to certify what made it to the ballot or not. I think it was a Thursday of that week, or it may have been the Friday. I don't remember exactly. But we came up with a brilliant idea over the weekend because everyone is asking us, are these going to qualify? What's going to happen? Is what if we've finished verifying everything over the weekend, and then the day after Memorial Day on that Tuesday, we just dropped it out of nowhere, which is what we did. So we pulled the staff in, which I'm forever grateful to them for going with this crazy idea. But we were there all day Sunday, all day on Memorial Day. Still feel bad about that one. All day on Memorial Day, got there very early on Tuesday morning, right after Memorial Day, and then dropped a press release out of nowhere that no one was expecting for 2 days, saying, here's what's going to be on the ballot. I only tell you that because it was fun. But this year, there are a lot of things going on the ballot as well. We have 4 constitutional amendments. We have a public safety bonds in some counties. We have school district splits going on. We have ZAP and RAP reauthorization in multiple counties. We have school district bonds. I know there are local referenda and other bonds, other ballot questions in your areas. So I want to talk about a few things that can get you in trouble. There's things that can both get you in jail and have you pay fines if you are not careful. And so we want to keep you out of jail and not paying fines. And so we're going to talk about Political Activities of Public Entity Act for a minute. So a public entity includes the state and each state agency, municipalities, so all of you, and government interlocal cooperation agencies, which is the League of Cities and Towns. So this applies to most of us here in the room. A ballot proposition includes constitutional amendments, initiatives, referenda, bond approvals, or other questions submitted to voters. So that's what we're talking about and who we're talking about. Here's the quick and simple answer. Unless specifically required by law, a public entity, so that's all of us, may not make an expenditure from public funds for political purposes or to influence a ballot proposition. Now, the distinction between political purpose and ballot proposition, political purpose, very specifically definitionally in the code, means campaigning for or against candidates. Influencing ballot propositions is exactly what it sounds like, influencing ballot propositions on the ballot. So, unless required by law, can't use public resources to influence ballot propositions or candidates. Okay? That's the simple answer. Simple penalty, each public official, here's the monopoly problem, who violates this is guilty of a Class B misdemeanor. So don't do it. You don't want to be guilty of a Class B misdemeanor. Simple email answer, because there is a separate thing. Over the years, one of the things that we ran into in the Lieutenant Governor's office and also in counties was that the biggest way people have violated the code or have gone around the code was through the email process. And then there's a question of, is that really a public expenditure? Because it's sort of a sunk cost. You've already got the email there. What do we do about that? And so there was a law passed that says a person may not send an email using the email of a public entity for a political purpose or to advocate for or against ballot propositions. So very specifically, don't use your email, your public email, to campaign either for candidates or for or against ballot propositions. And simple email penalty is fines in this case. So after giving the person notice and a chance to be heard, the lieutenant governor shall issue a fine of $250 for a first violation. I apologize to any city officials that I may have fined when I was in that office. Yes, there are some in the room. And $1,000 multiplied by the number of violations for subsequent violations. So if you use your email, not a Class B misdemeanor necessarily, but you could get fined. Now, with all these, there are more complex answers. There are exclusions. There are different scenarios where you could share certain information, where you can post certain things, and we don't have time to go through all of it right now. So ULCT is releasing a fact sheet walking through the specifics and the exclusions in the code, and also coming up soon, factual information about the constitutional amendments. Those are going to be two separate documents. So this Friday in our Friday Facts email, we're going to send out the rules about what you can and can't do under the Political Activities of Public Entities Act. I encourage you to read that. I encourage you to follow it. I encourage you to check with your city attorney for specifics about what may be happening in your city. If you have a local referendum, if you have a bond in your area, check with your attorney, be very careful, be very sure that what you're doing is appropriate. Quick cautionary answer, make sure your facts are facts. The law does allow facts to be shared. The thing that I've learned over the years, having received dozens of complaints around this in my previous job, is that one person's facts are another person's advocacy. I'll give you the ridiculous example. If this school bond does not pass, the apocalypse will start. Now you laugh, and it's true, that's ridiculous. But when you've spent time and effort on something and you're like, we need to get this through, that's the mindset that sometimes creeps in. If we don't pass this, everything falls apart. That's not quite a fact. So be careful about what you share. The facts are facts. Now, there's a political answer here too, and we're running short on time, so we'll go through this pretty quickly. Nothing in the chapter prohibits you as a public official from speaking, campaigning, contributing personal money, or otherwise exercising your First Amendment right for political purposes or, again, for or against a ballot proposition. So what that means is in your individual capacity, when you're not using city resources, when you're not in City Hall necessarily, you can say what you want to. You can say what you want to on your personal Facebook pages. There's a whole law. We could talk about that, and Jared Tingey did a great webinar on that. You can do what you want to on your individual time. You just can't do it using public resources. So with that, I'm going to bring up something that's become big in the room politically, and that is Constitutional Amendment D. There was a special legislative session recently that put a new ballot question on the ballot. So why am I bringing this one up? And not everything else. I'll tell you why. Because politically this is becoming a big deal. And individually, legislators may reach out to you or may have already reached out to you and asked you what your position is on this, ask you what you think about this, ask you whether you're going to support or oppose this. And while you can say, in my official capacity, I can't say anything. I can't use public resources to do that. In your individual capacity, you are allowed to. And so you may be put into a position where you need to answer questions about what you think about this. The public may reach out to you on this. So I want to make sure, one, that you're aware of it, that you're aware of what the rules are around that. Also aware that in your private capacity, you are free to speak. And as you do that, one, I put this up there on the board so that nobody can say they've never seen the language. I encourage you, if you're going to take a position on it, to go look at it, go look at what it actually says. As we've asked questions to members of our board, to our executive officers, to other individuals we've met with in the city, we've asked them, does this match up with your understanding of your current authority? So what it basically says is, you can amend or repeal a law that was made by, so basically, I'll say it simply, I won't do the lawyer talk. Jared can get after me later. If the public passed an initiative, you can amend or change it. That's what basically it says. That's the quick, easy answer. So our question has been, is that your understanding of the current law? And I'll tell you what, people have had different takes on that, whether that's what the current law allows or not. We can certainly say that if this passes, that will clarify that. So why am I telling all of you this again? One, we want to keep you safe. We want to make sure that as you are operating in this sphere, that you aren't doing anything that's going to get you into trouble. We don't want anybody getting fines. We absolutely don't want anybody in Class B misdemeanors. But we also want to make you aware that you are able to do what you want to do in your private capacity. So other things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be having a webinar in a week. So next Wednesday, we're going to have a webinar where Cameron and myself and Jared Ting, our legal director, are going to answer questions about this. So we have one final question. I know time's up. We're going to ask you one final question on Slido, and that is, what questions do you have about either the law here, what is allowed, what isn't allowed, or anything you'd like to ask us? And we're going to take time both to put out information on this, and we're also going to take time to answer questions as far as we're able to next week. So we're going to leave this one up, but again, tricky political things to deal with, but again, we're able to do hard things. So please let us know what questions you have. Please let us know how we can be a resource for you, and look forward to see you for the rest of the conference.